How many of y'all have ever been to SeaWorld? Okay. How many of y'all knew that there have been over 150 incidents involving the killer whales and their trainers, 3 of these incidents resulting in death to human life? Today I'm going to tell you why orcas should not be kept in captivity, whether at SeaWorld or anywhere else. First, I'm going to tell you how orcas live in the wild. Then I'm going to tell you how they live in captivity and the consequences of it. And lastly, I'm going to tell you of the 3 deaths that have occurred via Tilikum, a male orca that lives at SeaWorld, due to the consequences of having him in captivity. So let's dive in. Orcas are found in all oceans, ranging from the coast of Iceland all the way to the Pacific Ocean. They live in groups known as pods, and in each pod, the oldest female orca is in charge. Due to being a matriarchal species, the male orca never leaves his mother. Even while hunting, the male orca will only stray as much as a mile away from his mother. If his mother does happen to die accidentally, then he will try to recreate that motherly bond with either an aunt or a sister or a grandma. Orcas are very social creatures, so they are never by themselves. There are 3 species of orca: the transient, the resident, and the offshore orca. Just like there are 3 species of zebra with different physical markers, there are 3 species of orca with different physical markers and vocal calls. Despite all of them migrating in the same ocean, they never come in contact with each other or breed together because they don't emit the same vocal signals. For example, Norwegians and Russians may have similar physical qualities, but getting them to communicate may be difficult or non-existent due to their language barrier. Same goes with orcas. All orcas also have a 6-foot-tall dorsal fin. It assists in sharp turns and regulating body heat to the extremities. In the wild, less than 1% have a slumped-over dorsal fin. After learning about this information, we will now move forward to what orcas are like in captivity and how they are treated. There are currently 28 whales owned by SeaWorld today. They live in tanks that are 36 feet deep, 180 feet long, and 90 feet wide. To the human eye, this may seem huge, but to orcas that grow to be 30 feet in length, about the size of a school bus, they are rather tiny. Due to the small tanks, orcas are affected physically and psychologically. Orcas normally swim up to 100 miles in a day. However, due to their tank-restricted space, they are limited to not even 1. Due to this, they get bored and start eating the paint off the side of their tanks, which affects their teeth, wearing them down and giving them infections. In addition, their tanks are so shallow that the orcas sometimes just lounge at the surface and are subject to sunburn and West Nile virus through mosquitoes. Another negative factor is that an orca's pod is not the same as it is in the wild. Like I told you, orcas are different species and they don't talk to each other because they don't know how to communicate. However, at SeaWorld, they are all lumped together in the same tank due to SeaWorld not knowing any better and not having enough space. Due to all of them being together, this results in fighting and raking, which is when one orca will take its teeth and scrape them along another orca's skin. This results in bleeding and infections, which normally would not occur if they were all kept separate. Another factor about captivity is that male orcas are kept by themselves. Due to their pods being all mixed up, the female orcas don't like the male orca because they're from a different pod, and female orcas are more dominant than male orcas. So they keep the male orcas separate so that they don't fight and so that the male orca doesn't get the female orca pregnant. However, due to this, the dorsal fin, that should normally grow to be 6 feet tall, will grow that tall and then will slump over due to the orca being by himself. Another factor about captivity is that orcas don't live as long as they do in the wild. Female orcas can live to be in their 90s, even 100, and male orcas live to be in their 70s. However, at SeaWorld, the mean life age is 8 years old. A problem behind this could be artificial insemination, in which SeaWorld takes semen and artificially impregnates a female and to keep having more orcas in captivity. The problem with this is that orcas don't breed till they're 15 years old and they only breed every 5 years. With artificial insemination, though, SeaWorld starts breeding them as young as 8 years old and is constantly breeding them even right after they have a calf. Because of all these unnatural changes they are dealing with in captivity, orcas have started lashing out against their trainers. 3 incidents resulted in death by Tilikum, a whale at SeaWorld, which I will now tell you more about. The first death occurred February 20th, 1991, at Sealand of the Pacific in British Columbia. Kelsey Burns was a 20-year-old employee who was walking by the orca pool when she happened to slip and fall in. As she was pushing herself up to get out, Tilikum came over, grabbed her boot, and pulled her back in. This caught the attention of the two other orcas he was living with, who aided in submerging Kelsey with Tilikum beneath the surface. They would bring her up, Kelsey would scream, and then they would submerge her again. Her fellow employees tried to throw flotation devices, life vests, everything to her to get her to stay above the surface, but the whales kept her away from them. By the time they were able to corral the orcas away from her body, it was too late. Kelsey Burns had drowned, and her autopsy claimed it was an accident. The next death would occur 8 years later at SeaWorld Orlando. Daniel Dukes was like a homeless guy who snuck into SeaWorld July 7, 1999, and waited till nightfall to get into the orca facility. He then proceeded to strip down to his boxers and either jump in the pool of Tilikum or he put a body part in the water and Tilikum grabbed it. Either way, the next morning, a maintenance man found a nude man lying on the back of Tilikum. Dukes had bruises all over his body, bleeding in his brain, lacerations to his internal organs, and his testes were found on the bottom of the pool. His autopsy claimed he had not only drowned, but had obtained hypothermia due to being in the 50-degree tank. His death was also labeled an accident. The final death by Tilikum occurred February 24, 2010, at SeaWorld Orlando as well. Dawn Brancho was a 40-year-old veteran trainer, was doing a Dino Shamu show when she decided to lay down near Tilikum's head. Tilikum then proceeded to grab her left arm and barrel roll with her into the pool. When they resurfaced, he let her go, she swam away, he rammed her again and grabbed her and took her back under. The other trainers tried the same attempts as Kelty, throwing the flotation devices, but Tilikum kept her away from them. By the time they were able to corral Tilikum into the med pool, Dawn was dead. She had bruises on her body, her spinal cord had been severed, ribs were fractured, her scalp and ponytail were found floating in the water, and her left arm had been torn off at the elbow and was in Tilikum's mouth. Her autopsy claims she died by drowning and it was an accident, but one can see it wasn't an accident. It was an act of aggression after being in captivity so long. Today I told you why killer whales should not be kept in captivity. I told you how they live in the wild, I told you how they live in captivity and the consequences of it, and I told you of the 3 deaths by Tilikum due to having him in captivity. Since 2010, trainers have not been allowed in the water. It was recently established that SeaWorld is also not allowed to artificially inseminate anymore. SeaWorld San Diego has also claimed that they are going to stop their shows. The real question is, how long will it take before these whales are released back into the wild where they belong and where they don't suffer anymore? Thank you.